Right. So I'm in my wife's tank of a mum wagon today. So camera setup's a bit different. So yeah, so I was talking to someone via email, and they were talking about they were describing how people start to kind of gravitate towards you in a sense, and have an inclination to share certain things about their experience, share certain things about their life or their emotional state, or trauma was the one that was mentioned. And it's interesting, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's probably not possible to tell if this is something to do with awakening or a certain sort of inclination and personality. But I've definitely noticed that post-awakening, so to speak, there's definitely an increase in the willingness of people to openly share about their difficulties or their kind of emotional aspects of their emotional experience. And I think that's because there's a sense there of openness, or there's a sense there of space, and kind of with that there comes a sense of safety, or there's like an intuitive sense of the ability to, let's say, absorb those emotions, or to like, or it's like a shared experience of feeling of those emotions that I believe people can intuitively sense. Because when there's the capacity to openly or without resistance feel emotions or emotional experience, then that capacity is transcendent of the boundaries of separate people or separation. So the emotional experience that is felt isn't something that's limited to individual people or separate characters. There's a empathic, synergistic or shared experience of emotion that you get in touch with, or becomes a lot more obvious when that constantly running personal narrative isn't distracting or obscuring what's being felt. Because it seems a big function of that narrative, that sense of self, is set up to try and avert from or control or avoid sensory experience or sensation. And I would class true emotion, as a sensation, as like a visceral, or people call it energetic, experience of sensation. And that, simultaneous with and coupled with the senses, is something that's so mysterious and so intense that that limited sense of self can barely understand or handle it. So there's a sense of aloneness and a sense of helplessness that comes with experiencing this sense phenomenon with the felt to be real suggestion of a separate character who's the subject of all of it. It's just not right. And I think when people can sense that there's an openness there, or a space there where there's the capacity to empathically experience these sensations, these emotional, energetic sensations, then naturally they want to share their experience of it's usually pain or suffering or what would be deemed as negative emotion or intense emotion. They want to share that, or they want, let's say, you talking in separate terms. They want you to feel the emotion with them without separation. And there's an intuitive sense there that there is the capacity for that. So then people start coming up to you and unloading a lot of their emotional stuff. And it helps because there's the transcendent of borders and boundaries. There's the capacity to feel it and for that to be okay. And it does something, it seems to make that emotion okay and make it not as lonely anymore. So it starts to become apparent that the emotion that we are feeling isn't my emotion, but isn't anyone else's emotion either. Like, it's transcendent. I guess you could say, I described it this way, I guess you could say we inherit the responsibility to feel, and everything in our experience is what we are, including other people. So you could say all the emotion, all the feeling is yours, and yours alone. But then that transcends the limits and boundaries of separation that would categorise separate characters into you and me, because that empathic resonance transcends, in immediacy transcends those interpretations, those limits. It also completely transcends distance and time. So what starts to become more apparent about interacting with other people is the how it feels, the emotion, that the resonance that is there. And sometimes the narrative, it becomes clear that the narrative is what's being used to try and distance from, control, or avoid that. And it's not, well, I talk for myself, it's not my responsibility to take that away from people unless there's an inclination to do that. So that's why, say on this channel or when I'm interacting with people, then, you know, the assumption is by default that we're looking to dispel that illusion, and we're looking to get direct with the sensation. So then I can point past the illusion, point past the concept, but it wouldn't really be responsible to do that, or it wouldn't really be responsible to do that if someone hasn't asked in some way. So then there's some sort of expectation there where people will expect you to collude in their narrative, their coping mechanism, and there will be a a self-expectation that that's what to do, that you should make this person feel better. But of course that's not within our control. That you can't control the emotions. There seems to be the illusion of control, but that's because the emotion is mixed up with a thought experience, and it becomes my emotion, and then the illusion is, or it starts to look like, I'm in control of my emotions. And there's truth to that. But as far as non-duality is concerned, as far as what I'm talking about here is concerned, that's peripheral to the actual sensation. And the sensation is transient, but we do have the responsibility. We don't have the choice. We can't run away from it. We're bound to feel it. We're bound to sense. And that will appear in many different flavours and movements and textures. And it might be necessary sometimes to kind of cognitively figure things out. For example, conventional therapies and such. But ultimately that's going to be about allowing the sensation, opening up to and becoming curious about the emotion, rather than labelling it should or shouldn't be there, trying to avoid or control it. So it always seems to come back to the most skillful thing to do in this, in regards to helping other people, is to continue this awakening process and to become okay with your own experience in a profound way, that there's a capacity to feel everything and it to be okay. And that includes apparent other people's emotions. It's a big responsibility, but it was one that was inherent. It was one that was always there in the first place. It's not something new. We've always been feeling, and up until this point, say in the relative, we've always handled it. It's always been handled, which shows us that our capacity is infinite to experience sensation and emotion. So the deeper and deeper we go into this, the less and less there's a resistance to any aspect of experience, including emotion and thought. And that's what ultimately leads to the reduction in suffering. It's simplicity in what's already here without resistance, and a profound okayness that comes with knowing that this is the way it is, and it's complete. Like, this is all there is, this is it. It is enlightenment inherently already, it is perfection, it's complete. By the time that the mind comes in to interpret that, it's happened. It's already the case. So the mind's only following along in retrospect and seeming to project into different versions of the future to try and control this that's here now. That's what the bounce back into the mind is. It's a disassociative effect. Uncomfortable emotion is one of the big ones. Intense emotion. So we have all these automatic patterns that are in there set up to help us avoid that in this narrative. You can't help anyone else avoid that. All you can do is feel what's in your experience. Everything in your experience is what you are, including other people. So the responsibility is to feel everyone else's emotions too. And it's not one that you can opt out of. So it's becoming more and more okay, more and more at peace with, as what's here. Because what's here, this is all there is. The bounce back into a narrative, a lot of you watching this will have that as I say that. This is it. This is all there is. There's nothing else. There's no better, more enlightened experience in the future. All of that is just thought. But those thoughts themselves are perfection. So there's nothing wrong with the seeker. There's nothing wrong with a so-called illusion. There's nothing wrong with suffering. There's nothing wrong with uncomfortable, intense sensation. As this deepens, we start to get, I guess you could phrase it like, that clarifies, and then whatever is here is okay. It's like getting outside of that whole thing by getting closer to it, but you don't move, because there's no you that can move within this, because you're all of it. You see that there are no awake, unawake, enlightened, unenlightened people as well. There's just perfection. There's just wholeness. There's just enlightenment. And it's really about like letting go to the point where the thing that needs to let go stops. The thing that needs to look for a better this stops. And whatever's here is okay, as whatever it is. Because there's nothing separate in it to interpret it as not ideal, or there's a better this, or there's a something else. There isn't anything else. Anyway, I'm going to have to go now, but I'll talk to you next time.